The European war ended with the nuclear devastation of Japan. The Cold War terrified the post-war generation with the threat of nuclear havoc. And 33 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Europe has been taught a severe lesson. Its long-standing dependence on the US for protection is no longer a certainty. In fact, Washington has made it clear it does not want to shoulder the burden of Europe's security forever, and that message has been received loud and clear. Now, 80 years after the end of the Second World War, the strategic and physical map of Europe seems to be changing. And it appears that Trump and the Russian President Vladimir Putin have come to a deal, and the continent is now rethinking its entire security framework. France has now stepped forward, offering its nuclear umbrella to shield Europe from external threats. French warplanes armed with nuclear weapons could soon be stationed in Germany, signaling a whole new era in European defense strategy, as the United States, under Donald Trump, threatens to pull its military presence from the continent. Meanwhile, Germany's new leadership seems to be pushing for European independence from American security guarantees. The man who is expected to be Germany's next chancellor after his recent election victory is calling on Britain and France to extend their nuclear protection to the rest of Europe. Quite significant. Also adding that the continent can no longer afford to rely on Washington and should act independently. Meanwhile, at the White House, French President Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump marked the third anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine war. Standing side by side, Trump and Macron delivered starkly different messages. Trump implied that U.S. security guarantees for Ukraine could end once a peace deal is signed.
Yeah, European troops may go into Ukraine as peacemakers. So when the agreement is done, they can watch that everything is followed properly. I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Trump further said that Putin would accept an arrangement of European troops in Ukraine, revealing that he had personally asked the Russian leader about it. Meanwhile, Macron insisted that any peace agreement must not come at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty.
Peace cannot mean capitulation by Ukraine, that peace cannot be a ceasefire with no guarantees, that peace must include the conditions for Ukrainian sovereignty. We need to assume our responsibilities to maintain security and stability for Ukraine and for the whole region in the long term. And for we Europeans, that's an existential question.
In fact, Macron also echoed Trump's statement that a ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war could be reached, quote-unquote, within weeks. And in a televised address, Putin said that he would not rule out European countries playing a role in a potential peace settlement. Meanwhile, the division between the US and Europe is further growing. The US, in fact, voted against a United Nations resolution backed by most of Europe, demanding Russia's withdrawal from Ukraine and condemning the war. It reportedly marks the first time that the US voted in alignment with Russia since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. You see, the message from the White House was perhaps unmistakable. America's priorities are shifting, and Europe must fend for itself. For decades now, Europe has relied on America's nuclear deterrence, with around 100 U.S. nuclear warheads stationed at military bases across the continent, including in Germany. France and Britain, however, have maintained their own independent nuclear forces. Macron has recently been pushing for Europe to take greater responsibility for its own defense, and now Germany seems to be ready to listen. Like we said, Friedrich Merz is reportedly calling for serious discussions about whether France and Britain's nuclear shields could be extended to Germany and beyond. Merz, who is poised to become the next German chancellor, reportedly warned that under the Trump leadership, the United States has become indifferent to Europe's fate. France's nuclear arsenal reportedly consists of around 300 warheads, capable of being launched from submarines and fighter jets. Britain's Trident nuclear program, meanwhile, relies on 4 Vanguard-class submarines, each armed with up to 16 nuclear missiles. But behind these diplomatic maneuvers lies another high-stakes economic game. Ukraine and the United States are finalizing a landmark deal that would grant Washington a share of Kiev's revenues from natural resources. And Trump said that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky could visit the White House soon to sign the agreement, which, by the way, has become a major point of contention between the two leaders. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister posted on the platform X, stating that negotiations are in the final stages, with nearly all the key details resolved. However, this deal reportedly does not include the security guarantees that Ukraine had hoped for. As US and Ukrainian officials iron out or figure out the final terms, Moscow has also made a counter offer to Washington, suggesting that there is money to be made from closer ties with Russia as well. In an interview on Russian state television, Vladimir Putin invited American businesses to invest in Russia's natural resource sector.
Rare earth metals is a very important component, very important resources for modern sectors of the economy, and we are not doing much in this direction yet. We must do more. We would also be ready to offer our American partners, when I say partners, I mean not only administrative government structures, but also companies, if they showed interest in working together.
Russia's pitch, in fact, comes at a time when the global rare earth market is under intense pressure. Ukraine reportedly controls around 5% of the world's critical raw materials, including substantial reserves of graphite, lithium, and titanium, resources vital for military technology, electronics, and renewable energy. But Russia also holds vast mineral wealth. And as the US tries to reportedly reduce its dependence on China, which dominates the rare earth market, the battle for control over these resources is intensifying. So where does all of this leave Europe? France is stepping up as a nuclear power, it seems. Germany is demanding independence from the US in a way, and Ukraine is being pulled in pretty much all directions by economic and military interests, apart from others. With global alliances shifting, one thing is clear at this point: the decisions made will shape the fate of Europe for years to come. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.